Okay, good afternoon, everybody. I think out of respect for our time, we'll get started. Welcome to our third now in the series of our accreditation forums for this fall. I'd like to make sure that I remind all of you of a couple of really important things as we start this presentation. One is that you may have come in a little bit earlier, and if you did, before the sign-in sheet was there, would you please make sure on the way out that you sign in on the sign-in sheet? That's important evidence for us. Even though we know there are a lot of people watching that aren't physically in this room, the fact that we have everybody here sign in is one of the important pieces of evidence for us in our process. We also want to remind you that we're live streaming to Tulare and to Hanford and on the web, so that we know that there are some of you that are also watching either in your classroom or in your offices, and we're glad that you're taking the time to listen in on these important updates for us, so thank you for doing that. We've also been talking about trying our best to get as many different ways to elicit feedback from you. And so one of the things that we talked about between last forum and this one is that we'd also make some 3x5 cards available to you, so that as you're listening, if you think of questions that you'd like to ask and you write those questions down, and we call for any questions, we'll come down to the end of the row and pick those questions up. We're going to have two parts to today's presentation. So there'll be time for us to kind of pause for a moment after part one of the presentation and take some questions and discussion. And then we'll have part two of the presentation, and we'll take any additional questions and or discussion. And then finally, we also have an opportunity for you to respond via survey back to us. Just as we emailed out to you after the last forum, we will email out to you again an opportunity to provide any input, suggestions electronically. So again, we're just trying to do the very best we can to make sure that you're not only here, but if you're wanting to provide input, suggestions, feedback, that you have multiple ways to do that. And so we hope we have all of those bases covered. I'd like to say thank you to one of our board members who took the time to be here today. Anytime one of the board members pops in and shows an interest in this important work, we're really happy about that. So board member Earl Mann is here. Thank you, Earl, for coming today. I want to acknowledge one of the members of our Accreditation Community Advisory Committee. We have from time to time had our public members come in and sit and visit with us today. One of the newest members of our advisory committee is Mr. Juan Lopez. Thank you, Juan, for coming today. I always got to thank my boy Tony Maldonado for making sure that we're in the newspaper and on the COS student website. So thank you, Tony. And to our students who are here today, I see some representatives from the ASB or our new Student Senate, and I've been spending time with them every week, and we have students here today. I'm hoping they're here because they've been listening to the updates, and they've been listening to the information in Student Senate, and they're wanting to be a part of the process, and they're here as well. Today we're going to have two key parts to the presentation. The first is to review what we know now as recommendation number 1, and it's all about institutional planning. And the two presenters that are going to be sharing with you for this first section of the presentation today are Cindy Delane and Christian Anderson. So I'd like to introduce them, bring them up. And I think you guys know how to take it from here.
Okay. I'll let you be the clicker. Okay. You click. Well, welcome to all of you. It's good to see you all here, and hello out to the folks in Hanford and Tulare and those that are at your computer desks right now as we speak. We're going to talk about planning. Christian and I are part of Subcommittee 1, which is planning, and we've been working with this recommendation and this part of the standard since last March. And what the recommendation states, and I hate to read this to you, but I'm going to go ahead and do that, is in order to meet the standards, the team recommends that the college integrate, strengthen, and formalize its planning processes, systematically reviewing and revising them to ensure informed decisions for continuous improvement. Kind of a long, big sentence. So what have we done with that long, big sentence? Well, first I have to take you back to where we were. And briefly, there were many individual components of planning that we've had here at COS, and the linkages between most of these components were absent. And let me talk a little bit about that. Way back in 2008, oh, don't show that yet. That's my big key moment there. Hold on. No, don't show them that. Wait, you gotta wait. We didn't practice together very well. Don't turn the page yet. In 2000, ACCJC came to our campus for one of their visits, and a recommendation they had at that time was to develop integrated planning process and develop a comprehensive master plan. So at that point, this was a recommendation. Already you can see some key words back in 2000, integrated planning. So those two words were already said way back when. In 2005, 2006, the college developed a master plan, and this outlined, it was a programmatic roadmap for the next decade and described a planning cycle. So yay for us, we developed a comprehensive master plan. In 2006, we had another accreditation visit, and they said, very nice COS, you made some progress, you developed a master plan, there are components of the planning process are in place, including program review, and you have an annual report of the progress, you're meeting some goals, and there's some assignment of responsibilities, how to get this done. However, in that, you still need to develop across the board coordination. You're starting with some areas, you have your master plan, you have some program review, you have this, you have some of that, you have some cycles, but we're not seeing how this all connects. So what that equated to in 2006 was we were placed on warning, and I know many of you know that. But you can begin to see the kind of the thread that we're talking about since 2000. In 2007, another report, and again, ACCJC said we made significant improvement. Again, we keep moving forward, but not enough. So they liked the cyclic process that we had in place of reviewing the mission on a continuous review cycle and how we tied it to program review. We had a budget allocation process, flow chart in place, and so they took us off warning. Again, we thought, whew, great, good for us. We continued to move ahead with some parts and pieces, again, building, which you've heard this term before, but I don't think anything better describes it, as individual silos. So we were great at doing that. We developed councils and committees and had, some bylaws and a purpose, and each committee and council was working hard and doing what they were supposed to do. And then last fall, what happened at the site visit, a number of us who co-chair or were on many of these councils and committees were asked about how do you integrate? How do you talk to each other? How are decisions made? Institutional program review, how do you talk to the institutional planning and effectiveness committee? How do you talk to the budget committee? Of us who picked up on that problem right away, so that, not yet. I'm almost done, just wait. I'm building. So a number of us got together, the Institutional Program Review Committee, the Institutional Planning and Effectiveness Committee, the Research and Planning Committee, the Executive Board of Academic Senate, and we came to 2 different summits. So we kind of went through the same process and, okay, we think there's a problem with planning, integrated planning. What does that mean? We looked at other colleges, tried to define that, and then the group itself participated in an activity, and we all had to participate in small groups, and we had to draw diagrams on how we thought integrated planning looked then at COS. So we put that all together, and now that's what we came up with. Integrated planning model, I don't know if you want to call it that, at COS. Back, I mean, if you want to look at it, you know, prior to today's date or last, when we came up with the new model. But as you can see, and I apologize for the acronyms and the abbreviations and so forth, but I think most of you know it. You know, we have the Institutional Program Review Committee, Instructional Council, Curriculum. So we had all these great entities in place, but look at the arrows. You know, they're all over the place. Broken arrows, dotted lines, arrows going back and forth. So you can imagine if this is how we, the employees, saw integrated planning at COS, can you imagine what the visiting team from ACCJC saw when they came last November? It was this. You kind of, no wonder you guys, you know, no wonder we got in trouble because we had this here. And again, everybody doing a great job in their boxes, but how do you get it all to work together so everyone understands what's going on? Christian will take over now.
So I think we were all really shocked too to find that what was called, well, now it's called the District Governance Center. I don't remember what it used to be called. It doesn't even show up in the, I mean, it doesn't even, College Council. No one even thought we had, I don't know, how many people did we have in the room? Oh gosh, yeah. Dozens. We had dozens, yeah, 30 people. And not a single one of them thought to include College Council in our planning processes here. So here we are in September 2013. What we've tried to do is to sort of rationalize that mess that was back there, make sure that the links are clear and not overwhelming. We've instituted formal processes where we've written these down. In fact, it's in our integrated planning model, the processes are so formalized that you can even almost go month by month and say what has to happen in September in the planning model, what happens then in October, then followed by November. So we've done a really good job at following the advice this time, I think, from the ACCJC, and you know, we have no choice. What you'll see when I show you the new integrated planning model as well is that in addition to linking things and formalizing the process whereby planning is achieved, we've also made sure that it is a cyclical process, that basically we after we have done our planning, we also evaluate the efficacy of those plans and then make adjustments and create new plans as a result of that. Here's our new model. I think it's a little bit easier to follow than the old model. You know, and something that needs to be, I think, said again, and the ACCJC did say this in their show cause order, is that we did not make this model from whole cloth either. We did have a mission, and we did have master plans. We had a strategic plan. We also had institutional program review. These components were there. We had a resource allocation process, and we were involved in the project of analyzing data and trying to use data to make decisions. But I think what can't be argued with is that even though we had all of these processes, I'll go back to that, it was a mess. Like, what do you do with something like this? And the answer is nobody really quite knew. And when I'm talking to people out in the community, I hear almost the same thing over and over and over again. What I've heard at COS is that you had everything there, but you just couldn't communicate that you had it there to the visiting team. And it makes my skin crawl a little bit when I hear that, because what I think I'm hearing is that everything was there, you just didn't do the paperwork. But I would like to say something, that getting from here to here represents a tremendous amount of work. You know, you can have all the information in the world, but if you can't make sense of it, it's really not very valuable information. And we had all of these pieces out there, and we couldn't communicate, I guess, very well, and understandably so, I think, looking at that graphic, what was going on to the ACCJC visiting team. But the fact that we can now doesn't mean that we just have filled out the paperwork a little bit better. We've actually really thought hard about how all of these things fit together, and we've really tried hard to rationalize this process. So as you can see, we start with the mission. From the mission, we articulate the district's goals, and the goals are in the master plan, and these goals are sort of broad. They're broad statements. They're sort of like the guide rails that keep the college on course. And then from those goals, we create objectives, and those objectives are going to be measurable, right? So how are we going to achieve those goals, and then what are we going to do in order to evaluate whether the goals have been realized, or to what degree they've been realized? This happens in the strategic plan. In program review, what we have is a process whereby the individual units articulate what kind of actions they're going to be undertaking in order to achieve the goals from the strategic plan. Then we're going to evaluate those. Did we do them or didn't we do them? I think it's hopefully going to be a lot more straightforward in the future. Based on what we find in our program reviews, that will inform our resource allocation. What do we need in order to achieve these actions that we say are important to get done in order to fulfill the objectives outlined in the strategic plan? And then we're going to implement the plan, followed by an assessment of that implementation. This is the one component that we didn't have previously. So all the other pieces in this integrated planning model did exist, but the one thing that is new is this annual report on the master plan. This is where we reflect on what we've accomplished and what still needs to be accomplished, and we use it to reprioritize our objectives or inform whether or not our objectives need to be changed. And then we go and the process starts over again. So I think this is so much easier to articulate than the mess that was in the last couple of slides. So we're not done, though, because what we really need to do and what still needs to be done is we need to put this plan into this integrated planning model into practice. And putting it into practice is going to be more work. We're not done yet. So we have a couple of things left to do. We're going to use the governance process to implement these plans, and we are going to provide education to the rest of the college community, and we're also going to be watching. We're going to be evaluating. This is an important part of the planning process. I don't know if you recall, but in the ACCJC recommendation, they not only recommended that we formalize things and make linkages, but that we assess how things are being done and make changes when appropriate. So our implementation includes recognition of this. So we're going to have an implementation task force that tries to keep track or keep an eye on how well the integrated planning model is actually being used here at the College of the Sequoias. So I don't know what else to say. I just ran out of things to say. So if anyone has any questions, Cindy and I would be happy to take them. Okay.
Before we move on to the next section, I just want to make sure that I say something that's really important to me. You know, a number of different folks have been helping us prepare and present at these forums. And lots of folks have been doing a lot of work so that we could be as ready as possible. I think from the moment that this crisis began, there's two people that I can remember vividly seeing often and regularly and always in the spirit of wanting to dive in with both feet and their whole body and their whole heart and their whole soul. And that was to respond to this in a positive way and make College of the Sequoias better. And that's a special thank you to Cindy Delane and to Christian Anderson for the work that you guys have done. The one Christian had on one of his slides, the implementation task force. And that's an important feature because it's something, as we continue to review and evaluate and add the right pieces. The other thing that's been mentioned repeatedly in our show cause report, and we know is going to be the key to our success, is implementation and sustainability. We're COS 2.0, and we want to be something better or different than that going forward. And the sustainability of these structures and these processes are going to be our way to be able to do that. And so the implementation task force was a recent idea that kind of coalesced out of our response task force. And the idea is to have key members of that response task force join arms and be a support system for us for the next calendar year. It's going to take cycles for us to go through this process. We were in District Governance Senate yesterday, and we were experiencing new interaction and new exchanges from new people at the table that required us to have some of the experience from the response task force in the room to be able to make those things work effectively and find our way through these new dynamics. So the implementation task force, I just wanted to re-emphasize, is going to be one of those commitments to our sustainability. The next recommendation, recommendation number 3, was not one of the recommendations that was listed on our show cause action letter, but it was one of the 7 recommendations. So no less important, but didn't get called out to the level of show cause. But we've done a ton of work, and the whole idea to make the other 5 recommendations successful is to address the 2, and this is one of them, number 3, as well. And so I'd like to introduce the 3 presenters that will be sharing this with us. It's going to be Dr. Lacerna, our VP, Ryan Barry Sousa, and Dr. Dolly Ozturk. Jennifer?
Okay. All right. As Stan mentioned, we on recommendation 3, which is on research capacity, I wanted to just say that we've kind of gone a little bit out of order. We're not going sequentially, but if you recall, last week we talked about recommendation 2, which was the campus dialogue. Today we're talking about recommendation 1, which is the planning, and next week we're going to be talking about recommendation, I think 4 is next week, which is the student learning outcomes. And so research is central to all 3 of those, and that's why we have this research recommendation. The recommendation, I'll go ahead and read it to you because I want you to hear exactly how they wrote it, is that the team recommends that the college increase the research capacity of the institution in order to compile and provide data to guide all of the things we just talked about: institutional planning and resource allocation, program review and assessment, and decision making, and the key is for institutional effectiveness. So research ties all that together and helps us to make good decisions, and helps us with planning, and helps us with our outcomes. So that's why research is key. So that was the recommendation, and we did a little analysis of where we were. The first part of this is directly out of the report. And so what the team found is that there was a lack of a link to the research and the use of data to planning. So they as Cindy had talked about earlier, we were planning in a really kind of crazy way, but there wasn't a link to data. We weren't using data as much as, or they couldn't find where we're using data to inform that planning. There was also a lack of a formal process to make decisions based on data. And so they didn't see any way that we were doing that. And I know there was, again, like those silos of excellence, like our Title V grants and our all of our career technical education programs, nursing, physical therapy program, and program review. And I know like all of our other CTE programs at the farm and IT, they do that kind of stuff because they're required to do it. But there wasn't a way that we saw formal processes happening for that, or that the team saw that. It was unclear how data in the program review guided decision-making and planning processes. So even though we were using data, and I know many of you have filled out those program review forms and you've put your data and everything in there, we put it in there, but then we didn't take it the step further to say, okay, now we put that data in there, how do we make a decision on who gets funded or who gets hired or what happens next, or our objectives in the strategic plan based on that data that we've used at the program level. The other thing that the team said is that we had inadequate staffing to, that impacted our research capacity. And at that time, as you guys know, we had a director who had left, and we had a part-time person who had left, and then there was Ryan. So Ryan was carrying the load on his shoulders, and so that, that was apparent in their visit as well. The other thing they said is that we needed to raise the visibility of the research office and how data could be used to make informed decisions about programs, courses, and services. So really seeing, I know Ryan, working directly with him the last year, was just putting out reports and putting out data, and we have all these national and state level reports, and he was dealing with program review, and there were so many different things that he was providing data for, but it wasn't out there for everybody to see. And so for an example is every time we got a new grant, it's what's this data? How do I get this data? So he's having to recreate that on an individual basis every single time. There was also a need for a comprehensive action plan describing how data is used to make informed decisions that are reflected in the budget allocation process. And I already mentioned that again, but although we did have a budget allocation process that we went through, it wasn't clear to the team how we were using data to make those decisions. I want to talk about the things we did have, because we did have some good things going on. So that office, the research office, was linked to our institutional planning and effectiveness committee. Ryan sat on that committee. Also the program review, the strategic plan, which was, that update was really, a lot of it was done with that office, and then also the Basic Skills Initiative, which is Essential Learning Initiative on our campus. So there was a lot of links there. The other thing is that we had formed a research advisory committee, and there was a number of people, staff, administrators, faculty sitting on the research advisory committee, and we met regularly on a regular basis, and the whole point of that committee was to guide what was happening in the research office, the action plans, the kind of the research action plan, and then also the type of data requests that were coming in. So we had developed the data request form, and that was a way for us to kind of track what kind of data requests we were getting, what might be appropriate for the technology versus the research office, and kind of keep track of that. And then the other thing we had established last semester was an institutional review board policy and procedure. So there was, and then on top of that, I just want to give Ryan credit for the numerous reports that he was doing. So there was a lot of work happening, but we weren't taking those results and linking them to where all of these decisions were being made. And as you go back to that model Christian showed, data is central to the entire planning process. And if we are not using data, you saw that those arrows go up in every part of that planning process, then we're not making informed decisions for institutional effectiveness. So now Ryan's going to talk about where we are now, or as of September 2013.
Thank you. I got it. Where we are in September 2013. First, I'd like to say that increasing capacity isn't just about bodies. Research capacity happens in every office, every place around campus, and when they gave us the recommendation to increase research capacity. It wasn't just for the research office. It was an institutional level recommendation. So please try and keep that in mind for these first few bullets. Right away, the office has been retitled Research Planning and Institutional Effectiveness. And the key word there is institutional effectiveness. That's something that the office hasn't really engaged in. It's more been a program level effectiveness drive in the past. The research office is staffed with 2 positions. The district hired a director of research planning and institutional effectiveness and started in the fall. That's a 100% increase over the previous fall. So that's big numbers there. And the director reports directly to the president and serves on the following critical district committees, councils, and work groups. I do. Let's see here, the committees have basically stayed the same. Institutional planning and effectiveness, program review, outcome and assessment is a new one, just not enough for me to go around in the past, and essential learning initiative, the basic skills. Also what's new is his involvement in the council. There was no direct link to get that voice of institutional effectiveness directly up to the senior decision-making level. It took some time. In addition, some work groups have been created. We've had the Research Advisory Committee, which will now transfer itself into a work group. That will stay afloat. And we've also created a Solutions and Innovations work group, which will deal with the technical side of gathering and cleaning the data around campus. And we also have what's been in the works for over a year now, the Institutional Review Board, and that's more about human subjects research and shouldn't be confused with the research that might take place in your office with service area outcomes. In addition, we have a lot of changes, actions that we've had. We had a fact book that's been drafted this last spring. It's undergoing edits. It's been visited by a few of you folks, and some of the data has found your way into various program reviews. In the past, we had what was called a planning compendium, and it was a cumbersome document that could range up to 200 pages, so navigating to the appropriate data was difficult. The new fact book ranges from 25 to 30 pages when the final edit's done, and the graphics look pretty good. The data request form, as mentioned before, was created and piloted in the spring. We're rolling that out gradually as we have some systems of checks and balances behind the electronic form. It really can't be overstated what this form does for us, as we had the accrediting team on campus and trying to produce data all in one research capacity and showing what we do was flipping through emails for me at one point. And so I think the ability for the district to be able to click on a series of buttons and produce just a mountain of reports that have been brought in to either push towards curiosity, research capacity, program review, planning, it's a big, powerful tool. So it's different for everybody, but it's invaluable to us. Processes and timelines we're creating for evaluating the office's mission statement. This does speak specifically to the research office, but it has an outdated mission statement that has not kept up with the times, and it's appropriate for us to have a system in place for that. Service area outcomes were created for the office as well. Namely, I believe, to create and align a research agenda with the strategic plan, and also to increase the capacity to respond to the district's research needs. Let's see here, going forward, we have institutional planning model has data analysis at the core of all its planning. That goes back to the idea that research capacity happens in every office at every level of this campus. So it doesn't need to be thought of as a one-time thing. It's everywhere on campus. Master plan and strategic plan timelines specify when and what data. That's going to help drive the research agenda, which will help provide that sustainability that we need to get here regarding our processes. Process and timeline creating for reviewing, submitting data to the Chancellor's office. That's an important one that we have not had. As we have more and more things coming out of the Chancellor's office, such as the data mart, scorecard, we need a better way to make sure that data is accurate and represents what we are doing here on campus. So that's a big process that we have now started to get in place. In addition, the resource allocation rubric utilizes data analysis section of the program review. In the past, program review more or less operated as a floodgate. You passed program review regardless of your quality of analysis or the quantitative or qualitative analysis that you may or may not have provided will now actually get forwarded on to the resource allocation group, and they will look at that data analysis within their allocation of resources. And I think I'm ready to...
I just want you guys to notice, I just want everyone to notice the transition from old to new. So I was working with Ryan, and now we're introducing officially our new research director, Dr. Dali Ozturk. And I'm really glad he's taking over.
Thank you, Jennifer. So I'm gonna do the easy part, our action plan. I'm gonna start off with visibility. So and communication. Effective organizations, they have effective communication practices. This is also true for the field of research. We have a lot of things going on campus, a lot of research evaluation activities going on, but I don't think those efforts are being communicated as often as it should be. So one of our goals, plans actually, increase the visibility of available opportunities for research, evaluation, assessment, and also having access to data systems available to us. We're also planning to launch a research newsletter semesterly. So we're hoping to include all the good research is being done on campus already, as well as the new research we will be conducting. I use the term research in general terms. Research in general terms, actually systematic inquiry about learning something. Evaluation also allows us to collect information in a systematic way. And assessment activities, allows us to use data and characterize data and make some analyses. Our goal is to improve the visibility by communicating effectively. We're going to improve our website, and also we're going to be visible. Ryan and I will be almost all over the campus with every single committee and work group, so that will help us to become visible to our campus community. The next action item we have is creating a research agenda. So we have a lot of activities going on. Our colleagues earlier talked about the data being central of the planning activities. We also have other committees working on their areas that will rely on research and data. So we want to be sure that we have a really rigorous, well-crafted research agenda that will be aligned with our strategic plan. So that's very important. We will also plan some training opportunities. Evaluation and research is an area that may require specialty in some of the analyses required. We will be able to offer some training opportunities. That opportunities will vary on the type of the needs. Some departments and units may need the assistance with developing measures or designing evaluation studies, or any assessment type of needs. We will also provide education and training on how to access data systems that already exist. Ryan mentioned earlier, we have scorecard, we have data mart, we have data track, so we plan to offer some assistance in those areas as well. The last action item we have is building partnership with our technology services. They are a tremendous resource to the district. They collect a lot of data. They manage our data systems. The reason we wanted to partner with them, because when you're dealing with data, you're dealing with a lot of complex issues. So what I say, where there is data, there is trouble. So where there is data, there is problem. So it is always helpful to work with people who manage data systems. Researchers, we have our researcher hat, so we know how to design research and studies, but we may not have enough knowledge of how that data is gathered and collected, and the data warehouse, how they are built, and what type of architecture they use. So that actually impacts the data output from the data warehouse. So we're hoping to strengthen our partnership with our colleagues in the technology services. Ryan briefly mentioned that we have a new work group. It's called Solutions and Innovations. By solutions means, again, so we will have problems with data definitions mostly. In measurement theory, 101 is actually, so if you are able to define, I'm able to measure. So everything depends on the definition that we're using. So we will try to come up with the common understanding and definitions for all the areas we're trying to measure and collect data. If we do not have the correct definition of a data and a measure, so that is not going to be valid and not helpful at all. So just for that reason alone, our partnership will help us a lot. We also plan to focus on innovations. Research and data and technology, they go hand in hand. There are a lot of improvements going in the field. So we want to be on top of all that new stuff coming out. So we may be able to adopt some innovations, improve our efficiency and effectiveness. So thank you.
Do we have any questions for this recommendation? Any cards? Any online comments? Going once, going twice?
Okay. A couple of quick comments in closing. First, I think as Jennifer described the status of the research office a year ago, it really was, like many of us, during the difficult budget times, a place where reductions had occurred and where, in some cases, and in this case, an individual remained. And many of us had that kind of a feeling and still do to a certain extent with some of the resources that were lost. But one of the things that I want to do publicly is acknowledge that in the face of all of what research is supposed to do for a college and for a campus, Ryan came in as an individual and chipped away at that at a regular basis, and never, not just saying this because he has red hair, never came into my office complaining, never came into my office frustrated or anxious, always was trying to look for solutions, always was trying to fit in and fill in a really difficult situation. So I know he's glad to have Dr. Ozturk here, we all are, but it's worth a special thank you to Ryan for the year of kind of holding it together. And a lot of us, when we first saw this recommendation, we did, and I know some of you who have been co-leaders with me in this process, we all took a little comfort in knowing, big part of the solution to this one is find somebody, hire somebody, let's get a research director in here. That's what this recommendation is saying. But we made a good point in the presentation today also, and that is that research happens everywhere. And what I was pleased to see in the actions going forward, one of the things that was missing is we didn't have that strong partnership between research and our own institutional technology department. There's incredible talent in that division, Tim and his staff and what they do for us. And from the day I met Tim Hollabaugh as the dean of our institutional technology, he kept telling me, Stan, there's a lot IT can do, we know the technical side. We need somebody to help bridge us to the program side. And I think that's the combination now that's going to happen with this team, and the expertise that Dr. Ozturk brings to us is Dolly can do that. He can kind of talk program and talk technology. And only a few people can really do that well. And so we're pleased that he was not only interested in coming to Visalia, but also interested in coming to College of the Sequoias in an environment where, honestly, you guys, if we were to look in the mirror and be honest with ourselves, a lot of candidates might not have wanted to apply for this position. And thank God his wife is a native Visalian. Because that was a big draw, and we're really glad that they're here now. And of course, I've continually thanked Jennifer for her work, and continue to sing her praises along with all of you and the rest of us in the work that we're doing. So this was the third in our series. We appreciate the continued and constant attendance. And you know how we are when we set something up. Our commitment to transparency and communication is we're going to put this show on and we're going to share this information whether there's 2 or 200 of you in here. So we very much appreciate that you're here. And we know from the survey now that we've put out, we got 30 or so responses, Ryan said last time. We're going to get more responses this time. So we feel good about the fact that we're putting the facts before you. I think our whole goal with these fall forums was to show you where we are, where we were, where we are, and what we're committing to going forward. If we had more time, we could do it in more detail. But the point is, this is the commitment. These are the commitments we're making to continue the culture change in our institution. And we're all collectively, whether we want to or not, we're hanging our educational souls on this. This is what we have to do to succeed. So we're so glad that you're here to demonstrate your concern and caring for that with us as well. Any final questions or comments for the good of the order? Okay, thank you. We will be back for our last presentation, and we are adjourned.